Hello, CSU horn players. Today we're talking about auditions, recitals, and performance composure. Auditions are a big topic and one that maybe not everyone feels interested in talking about right away. I know I didn't for a long time, probably because I was kind of afraid of auditions. But the way to face something you fear is to learn everything you can about it. I'll specifically be addressing orchestral auditions, but if you want to do something musical after you graduate, even for community bands, you'll likely have to take an audition. So I hope that this is useful and that some of these processes will help you prepare to play your best. Additionally, I'm so happy for you because today I'm going to be able to share not just my advice about auditions, but also Adam's advice. And he is a person who has successfully studied the art of audition taking for a long time. Adam likes to say that there are things you can control and things you can't. That's definitely true when we're talking about auditions, though he also applies that philosophy to real life. The variables that you can't control at an audition are where it is, when it is, how other people play, and how other people act. But there are many variables that you can control, like your preparation, your level of focus, how you act toward others, and how you let others affect you. In terms of competition, it's always best, I find, to compete with yourself. Try to outdo yourself at each subsequent audition. Think of it as a job interview rather than a competition. Adam quotes current and longtime Chicago Symphony tubist Gene Picorni on audition preparation. You want to be 200% prepared for an audition because as soon as you step on stage to play the round, you forget 100% of what you know. We're going to talk about that on stage part later, but first let's look through audition preparation. Preparing for an audition is a magnificent feat. There are lots of steps involved to do it thoroughly, and if you're playing a big list, 20 excerpts or more, the preparation can easily be a full-time job. That's why I like to keep all of my excerpt preparation from previous auditions so that it becomes easier and easier every year. Here are 9 important steps to attend to as you prepare for an audition. First, find out about the audition. If you become a member of the American Federation of Musicians, or the AFM, then you have access to all of their job postings, which can be found on their website or in the magazine that comes out, The International Musician. For international auditions, you can look on musicalchairs.info. If you are interested in college student level summer festivals, which are basically orchestral summer camps like EMF or NRO, keep an eye on their website for dates. The best professional summer festivals, which are paying jobs for working musicians, post their job openings through the AFM as well. For those of you who may be looking at grad school audition dates, look up the websites of the school you're interested in, school or schools, and note not only audition dates or taped audition deadlines, but also application deadlines both for the university, the music school if they have a separate application form, and for financial aid. Adam also keeps an eye on TubeNet, which is an instrument-specific bulletin board where tubists talk tuba. I'm not sure if we have something like that for horn, maybe hosted by the IHS, but John probably knows, so you could check with him. Submit your materials on time. After you find an audition to take, prepare your materials. Have someone look over your playing resume. If you are to submit recordings, they should be recent recordings. Often, after you send your resume and find out whether you're accepted to the audition or not, you will need to send in a deposit check, which will be returned to you when you show up at the audition. Be sure to get everything in on time. The earlier the better, so it doesn't weigh on your mind or worse, slip past you. Get organized. Once you are sent a list detailing which solo and excerpts you'll need to prepare, gather your sheet music. Adam and I both like to keep copies of excerpts that are 3-hole punched so we can rearrange them in an audition binder at will. And those are kind of our official excerpt copies. I know other people that put together a fresh pack of excerpts for every audition and have them like spiral bound just for that audition. You should be collecting excerpts as you go, especially if you're keeping your performing notes on them. If there are excerpts on the list that you don't have, check the IHS website, brassexcerpts.com, the Horn Opera Project for opera excerpts, imslp.org for full parts, or if all else fails, write the organization that is hosting the audition and ask for the excerpt that you cannot locate. You can also ask for a copy of the excerpt if you're not sure if you have the right edition, or if you're unsure of exactly what portion of the excerpt they would like for you to prepare. Also, in terms of getting organized, take care of logistics. Once you get the date and time of your audition, take care of travel arrangements. Do you need to book a hotel? You can ask a friend or family member if you can stay with them. Do you need a plane ticket? Do you need to book a rental car? Do you need to take time off work? If you have friends that are good musicians whose opinions you respect, consider scheduling a mock audition to give yourself an early goal and also to allow you to play under pressure before the actual day. Have an audition strategy. Make a plan. How long will you be in the early phase of learning excerpts? How long in the recording yourself and listening back phase? How do you want to structure your practice? After I make my plan, I start a notebook to record everything I do towards the audition. I often include a journal type section to work out the thoughts that are in my head. Adam and I have different approaches in our preparation. It's important to know yourself and to find a way to prepare that works for you. Often that just takes doing it over and over again so that you can start to discover what helps you the most and what might slow you down. But we do share the way that we prepare with each other, and we learn from each other, and we see each other prepare for auditions. So it only helps to get the opinions of other good musicians. Listen, listen, listen. Do your listening homework to learn about the piece. Make a playlist out of your excerpts and listen to it once a day. Listen to each excerpt with the score. Listen to whole pieces if you've got time. Think about what you're listening to. Choose tempi and note what other instruments are playing. What part of the chord are you? Where does the tension rise and fall? Pick your descriptive words. Ask yourself, what is this composer trying to convey? Work your plan. Plan your work and work your plan. I think that's from the Randy Gardner book. Try to stick to the schedule you've set for yourself. Plot milestones along the way, when to start doing runs, when to do a mock audition, etc., and commit to them. On the other hand, things never go 100% according to plan. So even though you're going to work your plan the best that you can, allow for flexibility if you get behind and need to reorganize your plan, or if you want to add in an extra practice step that you didn't account for when you first laid everything out. Progressing. Try not to get stuck at any particular phase of your preparation if you can. Don't get stuck at practicing slowly or by procrastinating on the listening. Likewise, don't jump ahead to performance ready before you've put in the detailed practice. This is why it's important to have the long game in mind. Practice towards perfection. Nobody's perfect, but in the case of excerpts, you're trying to get close. So repetition, staying on track with your prep, and keeping the music foremost in your mind are all things that will help. For me, writing out exercises of the tough spots and practicing those, spot practice, also helps. We'll talk about how to practice focus later. Additionally, and this is the most important step to reach, record yourself frequently, listening back and taking notes, writing notes in your music, analyzing the problems and isolating them, then fitting the tough spots back into the whole. The judges are listening to details. But more important than practicing towards perfection is to practice performing. Here are 3 great ways to practice performing. First, mental rehearsal. Playing through a piece in your mind in real time with no instrument. It's the in real time part that is the true challenge. When I was your age, it was almost impossible to keep my brain from racing ahead when I did mental practice. But now I've done it enough that I can slow my thoughts down enough to mentally rehearse at the tempo that I will perform. Also, mentally practice until you feel comfortable singing it correctly in your mind. There are some playing mistakes that we make with our brains. When I was a kid in piano lessons, I was so proud of myself one day because I had learned the piece that my teacher gave me all on my own. But there was one accidental that I had practiced incorrectly, and I had practiced it so well that it was stuck in my head that way, like it felt like for good. It took me a whole month just to relearn that one note. And it wasn't my technique that made me miss that note. I was hearing it wrong in my brain. The number 2 way to practice performing, start letting the spirit of the music take precedence. That is what will make your audition stand out. And number 3, again, mock auditions. Play for anybody who will listen, even if they can only hear part of your list. Also, play in all different kinds of rooms. You never know what kind of room you'll be in. I've auditioned in all kinds of places, from big, gigantic halls to backstage areas with lighting rigs hanging above you and heavy curtains all around, to church sanctuaries, to teeny little conference rooms. You never know what to expect. One more word about recording yourself and listening, because I think sometimes that can feel intimidating. I know it was intimidating to me for a long time. I always sort of felt when people talked about recording yourself and listening, they'd talk about it in this way that was like, oh, you should record yourself and listen back. You'll really learn a lot. Like, oh, you're going to learn how terrible you are. And, that just really didn't make me want to do it. But actually, as I was preparing for the audition for my job in Boulder, which I've had for many years now, I was like, okay, I'm just going to bite the bullet and I'm going to do this listening. And the truth of the matter is I did learn a whole lot. And what I learned was, actually, I sounded better than I thought I did. And I remember one time in particular, it was one of the Strauss excerpts I was recording. I don't remember which one, but I recorded it and I almost stopped in the middle. I almost stopped playing. And because I was like, biff that, man. I'm going to have to go back and do that again. But I was like, nope, I'm just going to keep going because I got to practice keeping going. So I kept going. I finished it. I went and I listened to it. And actually, it sounded great. It was like the mistake was so subtle that only I would have noticed it. And that taught me a lot. That taught me that if you let a mistake get to you, it can become a big mistake, even if it was a small mistake. And it also taught me that I was sounding better than I thought I did. So, of course, you'll hear the mistakes that you're making and things that you want to correct. That's what your notes are for. But part of it is that you also get to hear your long-term progress over weeks. And that's really encouraging. After the last big audition I took, I did a debrief afterwards of what exactly I did in terms of preparation. This was probably 2 to 3 months of prep time, which is a real luxury. Usually you might have 6 to 8 weeks from the time that you get the list until the day of the audition. So here are the materials that I gathered together. First of all, the audition list, and then sheet music for the excerpts. Exercises that I write myself, detailing how I want to practice the tricky parts of each excerpt. my excerpt listening pages, like I've been having you guys do, a practice notebook where I record what I do toward my plan in each practice session, and also journal through any fears or stumbling blocks I'm having. An envelope containing slips of paper with the name of each excerpt so I can draw from that envelope and randomly construct a round. Favorite recordings in a playlist. My preparation plan. And then lastly, this is the first time I had done this, a tempo chart that I put together after I did my listening, which is basically a list of all the excerpts arranged from slowest to fastest metronome marking. Sometimes you have excerpts that are kind of close in tempo or the same tempo, and if I have trouble finding the tempo I want using a tempo setting spot, I may use a different excerpt with a similar tempo as kind of an extra tempo setting check in addition to that tempo setting spot that I've chosen from the excerpt itself. Here were the phases in my preparation plan, which, keep in mind was maybe even twice the amount of time I would normally have. In phase A, I practiced the list as a run-through 2 times. So however many days it took to get that done is how long phase A lasted. I was not strong enough to play down a long list like that all in one day, so it would have been spread out. In phase B, I practiced my full handwritten exercises 2 times, so basically I was just working the tricky spots in phase B. I also narrowed down those exercises, cutting out the parts that I thought were pretty easy to practice and just leaving myself a smaller set of exercises for the next time, which were things that still needed work. In phase C, I practiced the reduced exercises that I did for each excerpt, and then I ran through that excerpt with the metronome, and I did that 2 times in phase C. In phase D, I ran each excerpt with the metronome, then I recorded it with no metronome, then I listened back and I took notes, and then I ran the excerpt again with a tuner. And lastly, I kind of reduced my exercises down to a final set with only spots that I really needed to practice consistently in order to produce that sound every time. In this step, I started playing my Mozart and Strauss expositions every day. It was a big list, had 2 solos on it. So I was alternating between playing with the orchestral recording or using a metronome while recording and then listening back to those solos. In phase E, I continued to practice my Mozart and Strauss, but I only played 1 solo each day and I traded off. I read my previous comments from recording and listening, and then I recorded with no metronome, but tapped out the tempo first on my metronome to make sure I was kind of in the ballpark. Then I listened and took notes. I played my final exercises, so just the trickiest spots, and then I played the excerpt with the metronome and the tuner. In phase F, I kept up with Mozart and Strauss every other day. At this point, I made kind of a round 1 list of everyday exercises, excerpts that were, so difficult I really needed to work on them every day. The other excerpts got divided into lists that I distributed over several days. I basically played 2 rounds a day, including the everyday round. So 1 everyday round and 1 from the rest of the rounds. I'd read notes from the last recording session. I'd set my tempo by tapping out on the metronome to see if I'm close in my head. I would do at this point, a full mental run, including my whole mental preamble, which I've been teaching you guys. And then I would play the list for that round. After that, I would listen and make notes, then play that round again with the metronome and without the mental run first. In phase G, I started to intersperse 1 day per week where all I did was just start the excerpts. And instead of playing the full excerpt, I would stop playing and finish each excerpt with a mental run. So this not only gave me a bit of a face and brain break at this point in the preparation process, which you can tell was pretty intense, but it also helped me prepare for the way that I'm going to be starting and then mentally singing through excerpts in my audition warm-up room to keep myself from wearing myself out. As you can tell, now we're starting to get closer to the audition itself. In phase H, I played for Adam on a Monday and Wednesday, half of my list each, and then I replayed the list I had played for him on Tuesday and Thursday with his comments in mind. So I played for him 4 days in a row. In my last phase before the audition, phase I reevaluated my everyday excerpts. The hope is that some of them can move into the every other day pile because they've improved. I like to use a system for rating my excerpts when I'm listening to my recordings that I learned from Jason Snyder, who's now fourth horn in the Boston Symphony. Not only do I write comments about what I'd like to improve or what I liked, but I also rate each excerpt a 1, 2, or a 3. 1s need lots more work, 2s are kind of halfway there, and 3s are almost performance ready. So in this last phase, I alternated between Mozart and Strauss every other day, plus I played my everyday excerpts, which are hopefully a smaller list now, and then half of the remaining excerpts daily. And lastly, I listened and took notes. So you can tell my endurance is also a lot stronger at this point than when I started my audition prep. A few more practice tips for auditions. Have a regular audition warm-up that you'll do every day, both for when you're prepping and when you're going to do the audition. Buzz the excerpts with recording and do the fingerings. It's a great way to tackle seemingly impossible excerpts. So if you do that first, you can let your subconscious brain do a lot of the early work for you. As high brass players, we always have to be gaming out for endurance. The conventional advice about a big performance is that you want your last heavy playing day to be 2 days before. And then you want to take it easy the day before a big performance and kind of treat yourself kindly. The baseline qualities that an audition committee is looking for are tone, time, and intonation. So for the time and intonation part, be sure you're practicing with your tuner and with your metronome. And if you don't do it, just remember, somebody else will. So give yourself the best chance possible. Use every tool at your disposal, and I'm including in that list your recorder. Even after you've done all of your practice, there's still preparation to do. If your audition requests a recorded preliminary round, send it in on time, recorded with good sound, and either online or by mail as requested. Don't splice your recordings or use old recordings. If you can't do it in real time, then you're completely wasting your money traveling to the audition, so don't cheat your way into it. If the audition is in person, budget your money. It can be expensive to go take auditions. Make travel arrangements early. Get there with plenty of time to get comfortable. Map out your way to the audition ahead of time. Familiarize yourself with the travel route to the venue, parking, and which entrance you should use, the front door or the stage door. On the day of the audition, wear proper attire. Be comfortable enough for playing, but don't be slobby. Warm up away from the audition site if possible. Or if you have no other option, arrive with plenty of time to warm up after you get checked in. Check in for the audition early, but not too early. You'll get your deposit check back along with the list for the first round. Always be courteous to staff, who could be your future colleagues or bosses, and also to other auditionees. Maintain focus on what you're there to do. Keep to yourself, even if you need to go outside or sit in your car. You want to minimize outside influences. There will always be time to socialize later. In the practice room, warm up, but don't overdo it. I like to wear earplugs so that I can only hear myself and I can tune out the other auditionees. Like I said earlier, I like to get focused and stay focused in the warm-up room by starting the excerpts in the round and then mentally rehearsing them. Stick to your plan. No day of changes, especially because you hear someone else playing something differently than you in the practice room down the way. Be aware that the schedule can get behind. It often does. Lastly, this very important thought. What is a good frame of mind going into an audition? And for that, I would say confidence in your preparation and in your musical interpretation. It's hard to know what you can expect at an audition. What might be on the stage? There might be two stands, one with the sheet music provided by the organization and one for your own music should you choose to use it. Sometimes there's just one stand with the sheet music they provide and you can put your sheet music up there on top of it. Where will the judges be? Honestly, they could be anywhere. I've played plenty of auditions where the committee is on stage with the musicians. In some of those, the auditionees were looking out toward the hall. In others, we were on one side of the stage facing the other side of the stage. I've had auditions where the musicians are on stage and the committee is out in the audience. If you take an audition for an organization that is unionized, then you should expect at least the early rounds to be a blind audition, where a divider is placed between the auditionees and the committee, where a carpet will be laid on the ground to muffle any gender implications communicated by footsteps, a union representative will be present, and a proctor will be your go-between if anything needs to be communicated to the committee. That person will probably also lead you into the audition and out of the audition space. Who should you talk to in an audition? The proctor. Who should you not talk to? The panel or out loud to yourself? To play a first note or not to play a first note? That is the question. Some people like to play a first note to test the room. If you plan to play a first note, they say, make sure it's a good one because it's your first impression. For me personally, I prefer for the first impression I make to be music. After all, I've just warmed up and I've been starting these excerpts over and over, so I know my pitch by now. A test note for me would just create doubt rather than certainty. So for that reason, I choose not to. But it's a personal choice, and if you have more doubt created by not knowing what your space is going to sound like, then that's a choice that you are allowed to make. And furthermore, you're allowed to change your mind in different circumstances, just based on what the space looks and feels like. What does it feel like to be in an audition? What's happening inside your head? Well, there's what can happen inside your head, and there's what we want to be happening inside our heads. For me, it often feels like an audition happens in slow motion. Afterward, I feel like I can remember every second, and it feels like it takes 20 minutes rather than 5. That's probably my fight or flight reflex, looking for safety from what feels, to me, like a dangerous situation. But as long as you're prepared and you stay focused on what you're doing, then it's just about making the music you want to make. And if you can be in competition with yourself and not with others, even better. Additionally, it's easy to get distracted by random thoughts. Believe it or not, even in the middle of an audition while you're playing, about what a cool city you're in, how much you'd like to get a new job, what the committee is thinking, etc. Maybe about how the person before you played or how the person after you is going to play. Those are all diversions. The mission is to stay focused on the music. Play with confidence in an audition and stick to your interpretation. As Adam says, you can't control the sound of the room, but you can control the sound coming from your seat. Take time between excerpts. Flip the page, empty a few slides, think. What are you thinking about? Your tempo setting spot, vamping your tempo, your descriptive term, count yourself in, and then you go. Paint a big picture with the music that you play. Make the judges hear the rest of the orchestra in their mind instead of just you alone. No sighs or disappointed grunts. You don't need to communicate that you know that you've made a mistake. The committee is doing the judging, not you. Enjoy making music. The committee wants you to play well. Adam loves to say that when you're playing an audition, you literally have a captive audience. They cannot leave. So obviously, they're rooting for you to play something that makes that time worthwhile. As long as you've got them held hostage, you might as well try to enjoy yourself. You can ask the proctor to replay an excerpt, but one excerpt per round max, and only if you know you can play it better. And keep in mind, if you get to the end, they're going to know who you were through the other rounds, so they'll know that you asked over and over to play things again. Why might you be asked to play something again? Maybe it wasn't as good as your other excerpts and they want to give you another chance at it. Maybe the music director prefers it a different way and wants you to try it that way. Or maybe the music director just wants to give you some instruction, even if it's crazy, just to see if you're adaptable. So always assume the positive. A good response could win you the job. What can it mean when you're cut off early? Well, sure, it can mean that you've been knocked out of the running, and usually that is what it means. But I'll tell you that Adam was cut off early in his first round in Boise, and he found out later that's because he sounded so good they decided they didn't need to hear him anymore in that round. So always stay positive. You can't know the committee's thoughts. How should you act after the audition? Patient and gracious. How will your brain react afterward? You'll have to learn this for yourself, but my brain goes into instant replay, and it stays there for a few hours. It's like half annoying, but it's half awesome, because then I have a few good hours to write down a debrief of how the audition went. My body is always exhausted after an audition, probably from thinking so hard and from managing the inherent stress of that situation. How long can you expect to wait around, and how do they announce things? Usually your audition will be played in a 1-hour round. Everyone who played in that 1 hour sticks around to hear the results. But if it's going to be a long time, like if the committee takes a break or they're taking a long time to deliberate, then the personnel manager might offer to call everyone and let them know if they've advanced or not. If you get called back, there could be 1 more round or 2 more rounds. Once you get down to the final round, it's usually down to 2 or 3 people. The committee could take down the screen. They could have you and the other auditionees play on stage next to each other. They could postpone their decision and let you know their choice later on. Or have you do trials where several finalists will each play a concert cycle with the orchestra to see how they fit. And this is increasingly common, they could also declare no winner. For professional summer festival auditions, they're generally taped, so you'll usually hear back from that in a few months after you've sent your tape in. If you win the job, congratulations! If it is an orchestra job, you'll probably meet the music director, the committee, or at least one of the other members of your section. Generally, you'll receive a contract to sign within a few weeks or so. You may be required to join the local branch of the AFM, our union. Unions negotiate under what we call collective bargaining, meaning that they do the bargaining for all of the musicians in the orchestra at once. Our union helps set working conditions, wages, and represents individual musicians in case of labor disputes. And I mean legally. Musicians who work unionized jobs pay a small percentage of work dues to the union to fund the very important work that they do for us. What's the best way to keep a job? First of all, be a fantastic colleague in and out of your role as a musician. Be a professional and show up prepared, on time, with everything you need, and always play your best. Lastly, be fun and be a nice person. Giving recitals is so much fun. Many of you will play recitals as part of your degree program, so here are some things to keep in mind. When choosing repertoire, think about how long a program you want to play. I limit my recitals to an hour, maybe an hour and 15 tops, including an intermission. First, it's hard to play solo rep on our instrument for a long time, so I want to make sure that I'm staying within the window of when I'm going to sound the best endurance-wise. But secondly, as a listener, I find it difficult to listen to same timbre instruments play for longer than an hour, even with varied and interesting rep. So try to choose pieces that complement each other or offer interesting contrasts. Do you want to go with a theme? Do you want to choose music from a variety of different countries or compositional periods? Do you want 2 full-length works with multiple movements, one in each half of the program, supplemented by single movement pieces? Do you want to include any chamber works? Where are your most taxing pieces placed in your program? Can you surround them with pieces in easier registers so that you can get like a little break before or after the toughest parts? For recital preparation, you'll slowly be building up to playing the whole program. Practice standing up. It may take a while for you to feel comfortable holding your horn up to play for the length of a full recital, so I like to have 3 months to prep for a recital and more if it's available or if I have like a brand new or especially challenging piece. If you don't have the endurance to play the whole show the first time you try it all the way through, don't worry, it will get better and better. I like to get to the point where I can play the whole program for every day, at least 2 weeks for before the show, if not 3. When you get to the point that you're doing run-throughs, do not stop to fix issues. It's as important to practice playing past mistakes as it is to work on that trouble spot, but do it later. This is so that you can come to terms emotionally with not being able to get something back or have another go at it. It'll also give you a bigger picture approach for each piece when you get ready to perform. When you rehearse with a pianist, you're kind of the ensemble director. Have a plan going in for what you'd like to accomplish time-wise. I like to run a piece, rehearse the spots that need work, and move on to the next piece. That's because I want to have enough face to get through everything. You'll be the one picking out spots that need rehearsing and where you should start, etc. Luckily, the first time you do this, John will probably be around to help you. The better prepared you are for rehearsals with the pianist, the easier it will be to get through those rehearsals face-wise. I really like the way that my teacher Gail had her students tune with the piano. We tune to horn pitch C or concert F when we're tuning to the piano. So Gail would have the hornist play first and then ask the pianist to come in. That's so you get a chance to play where you actually are rather than risk accidentally using your good ears to match pitch with the piano. Remember, when we're tuning, we're not matching, we're comparing. Then we change the length of our instrument so that it does match the pitch that we're given. Playing with a piano requires soloistic projection, meaning that you can play everything a little louder when you're the primary voice. I like to stand in the crook of a grand piano and play into the open lid, almost like I'm using it as a reflecting shell. Whether I ask the pianist to play with the lid half open or fully open completely depends upon the space. So I'll have someone, usually Adam, listen to a sound check at a dress rehearsal to decide, and for that particular pianist, instrument, space, whether we need more or less piano. When you're ready to start a piece, nod to your accompanist. If you're the one that cues the beginning, then take a rhythmic breath in the tempo you want so that your accompanist knows when you're going to come in. I don't know if you're required to write program notes for your recitals at CSU, but I really enjoy writing program notes. I learned so much about the pieces, and I think program notes give your audience more clarity regarding the music. Personally, I always read the program notes when I go to a concert as an audience member. If you're giving a recital, advertise. Putting on a recital is an enormous accomplishment. You should be proud of yourself and want people to come. Don't fall under the spell of thinking that it has to be perfect to be good enough for someone to enjoy. In fact, my greatest concern when I'm playing a recital is enjoying myself, because if I'm having fun, then everyone can have fun. But if I'm having a bad time, everyone's having a bad time. You can obviously advertise on social media, through email blasts, by texting people a reminder, designing a cool or funny or classy flyer, posting it around school, and you can even advertise in your local community events database online. All of this should be free except printing the posters. Pick appropriate recital attire. Men often choose a suit, but there are more options in men's fashion these days that look dressy but may not be as hot as the suit or as confining as a necktie. Women should choose something that's dressy and attractive but not distracting from the reason that you're there, which is to share your music. If you want to wear high heels, which is fine, but always a risk. What I do for those 2 or 3 weeks before the show when I'm running the recital every night, I wear my dress shoes. That way I get more comfortable standing in them and they get more broken in. I always bring my dress shoes to all rehearsals with my accompanist. I may also do a few run-throughs in my full recital outfit, and if you're going to wear hose, be sure you wear them to see how you walk with them. I generally bow with my accompanist at the beginning and end of each piece. We bow together, and the accompanist follows my lead. Every single time I bow, I think about a phrase that my chamber ensemble Fifth House would say in order to time our bows together. On the way down, you say, "Did I shine my shoes today?" And on the way up, you say, "Why, yes, I did." I'm not sure how it works at CSU, but when I was a student, we always had to compensate our pianists ourselves. Make sure you know their rates ahead of time. If you ask to schedule 2 rehearsals, a dress rehearsal, and a performance, which is usually what I do, then expect to pay for that time. This is a professional musician who's devoting their time and skills to helping you sound good. Plus, think of how many more notes they have to learn than you do. Lastly, as a nice gesture, I like to get my accompanist or any chamber musician who plays on a recital with me a little gift as a thank you for sharing their talents with me. Now that we've talked about how to prepare and what to expect in these big playing situations, let's discuss performance composure. For some musicians, performance composure can be one of the biggest challenges of performance. How do you stay cool in the face of nerves? How do you keep your cool when things aren't going the way you planned or practiced? For me, it's a combination of long-term strategies that keep me balanced in my everyday life and short-term techniques that can help take off that final edge coming up on an important event or even right on the day of. For me, the long-term strategies can't take care of everything on their own, and neither can the short-term techniques. But together, they help me get as close as I can to being able to play in what we call the zone. Very few of my long-term strategies for managing performance composure directly relate to the horn. They're basically whole body wellness activities. Stretching of some form is really important. Musicians sit all day long, meaning that posture and muscle comfort can easily be compromised. Adam and I do a yoga class online twice a week. This has the added benefit of calming your mind and cultivating focus. You can definitely find free yoga videos on YouTube. I recommend Priscilla Patrick. Her videos are short and really effective. You could probably even do them without a mat. You could also buy a virtual video collection on Amazon, which are usually pretty cheap, like $6 for 3 or 4 episodes. I really like Rodney Yee. He was my first yoga instructor on video, and I've enjoyed doing his yoga videos for almost 2 decades now. Some form of active exercise is highly recommended for wind players. You definitely want to get the kind of exercise that will get your blood pumping and get lungs moving through moving through your lungs. I rollerblade every day if the weather's good. Adam bike rides. We both like to go hiking. We're in Colorado, so there's also skiing, running, whitewater rafting, snowshoeing, and I bet you can think of many more activities. And if none of that interests you, how about a Zumba video or Tai Bo, or maybe look up some beginning martial arts videos on YouTube. We definitely play better when our bodies work better, and this becomes more and more important as you get older. I like to think about the nutrition that my husband and I eat. I won't say much about that, except that the quality of the food you're eating definitely makes a difference in terms of your cognition. Fresh is always best, and eat your colors. If everything you're eating is brown, you're missing out on some important nutrients that help you think and function. Feed your mind with information and with vitamins and minerals. It keeps you calm, balanced, and it gives you stronger, longer-term playing health. I like to meditate occasionally. I'm not trained in it, so I just do whatever works for me, and I'm not great at it because I don't practice it all the time. But I use meditation when I'm preparing for an audition to get into my visualization. I usually like to lay down so I can be comfortable for a long time, and then I try to relax every part of my body one at a time from the feet up. If you think about taking deep cleansing breaths, it helps you release tension and calms you. Then, after I've relaxed everything all the way up to the top of my head, I'll do visualization, which we'll look at in just a moment. Lastly, I actively engage in positive thoughts. Being an optimist is a choice. Being a pessimist is also a choice. I choose to be an optimist because it gets me further toward my goals, and it's just a happier way to live life. The technique I introduced to you by Dr. David Burns is a big part of how I'm able to keep my thoughts positive and not let my negative emotions drag me down. If I have a tough thought about myself, maybe I'll never be able to play this lick, then first I must hear and recognize that as a negative thought. Sometimes that's the tough part. apart. Then I use Dr. Burns's chart of common thought distortions to show myself what is not true about that thought. I'll never be able to play this lick. That's fortune telling because I'm trying to predict the future. It's all or nothing thinking because it implies that I can either play the lick or I can't, which ignores the fact that it will improve with practice. It's overgeneralization, viewing a negative event as a never-ending pattern of defeat, and mental filter, dwelling on the negatives and ignoring the positives. Magnification, blowing that one lick out of proportion in terms of its importance. So now I need to come up with a more true thought that puts the lie to my original distorted thought. How about, maybe I can't play this lick right now, but there have been things I couldn't play before. It got better as I practice them. And if I take it apart and figure exactly where the trouble is, then I'm sure it'll get better with more time and attention. Maybe those kinds of thoughts sound kind of neutral, and that's on purpose. I'm not trying to invent some out-of-touch fairy tale dream of my inherent awesomeness and how it's going to help me overcome these oppressive thoughts. Instead, I'm looking for an authentic thought that's more real than the negative thought that my feelings have forced upon me. And authentic thoughts are often more measured, more patient, more understanding, and often feel more neutral. Although Steve introduced me to Dr. David Burns for my performance mental health, now it's a part of my life strategies for maintaining balance. Particularly important in your long-term strategies are the activities that promote focus and relaxation, because that's what most of us are lacking in a performance situation. Though there are people that have to ramp up their energy when getting ready to play, most of us have excess energy that needs to be harnessed and directed into productive directions. Now the more short-term techniques. Only think about your upcoming performance if it's on purpose. Otherwise, as my teacher Steve likes to say, if you're going to be on, be on. But if you're going to be off, be off. So here are some ways to be on or to think about your performance on purpose. Practice your horn. I like to say that action conquers fear. I heard that on a TV exercise show once. And I think it's so true. When I'm feeling nervous for a performance, nothing calms down those nerves like pulling out my horn and taking action toward my fears. Do mental practice, which, as we said, is thinking through your piece in real time. You can do it with the fingerings or you can do it without. You can do mental practice while you go for a walk or before you fall asleep or whenever you have quiet time to yourself. Or you can do it while you're visualizing and kind of really, bathing in the mental practice. So the next step, you can visualize. As I said earlier, I like to meditate to relax myself so I can visualize myself playing my performance completely relaxed. Imagine the space you might play in and you making music in it. Maybe you can find a picture of it online. Maybe you want to do a mental run combined with your visualization where you mentally perform in the venue or in your imaginary version of what that venue might be like. Visualize how it feels to be performing, and as you visualize yourself performing, imagine feeling that you have prepared yourself to be successful. Then, as you mentally run your piece, imagine feeling successful in that moment. And lastly, and this is for me the most powerful part of this exercise, imagine finishing your performance and feeling satisfied that you have achieved success. I like to cultivate a positive frame of mind around an upcoming performance. Nervousness is a kind of anticipation, and anticipation can be felt as either dread or as excitement. To me, these feelings basically feel the same physically, kind of butterflies in the stomach, but the thoughts that are involved are a lot different. When I'm starting to feel that I'm dreading a performance, I first pull out my horn because action conquers fear. But then I'll tell myself that actually I should be excited to share a piece of music, to share an experience with the audience and my fellow musicians who might be performing as well, and to share the hard work I've done that I'm rightly proud of. Those are all things to be excited about. Another thing is that your thoughts will evolve with a piece as you prepare it. That means that while you're practicing, you might have kind of random ideas pop into your head about how to improve a section or little, ideas you might try to fix something spontaneously on the spot. Maybe you try a different fingering all of a sudden. But I always aim to have practiced enough that my thoughts have done most of their evolving before I hit the stage, so that what I'm thinking about while I'm playing can be just as practiced and disciplined as the notes that are coming out of my bell. One frame of mind I like to practice when I'm getting ready to perform is determination. If I'm playing something and it feels like I'm about to lose the buzz or I'm going to run out of air, this is going to sound silly, but I think about Dory from Finding Nemo. She likes to say, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. And again, maybe that's kind of dumb, and I'm not like a huge Finding Nemo or Disney fan or anything like that, but it's just an idea that really keeps me going when I need a little extra determination. So you just keep swimming. And speaking of water, drink a lot of water 3 to 4 hours before a performance. But I like to stop 2 hours before. Then your face is kind of hydrated and supple, but hopefully you can finish needing to use the bathroom before you go on stage. You may need to adjust those time frames for yourself and your body. This also helps if you're one of those people who feel like you need to go to the bathroom when you get nervous. Then you'll have a legit reason to go to the bathroom, and your nerves will have less of a chance of spinning off into more anxieties in your head. Eat bananas. Potassium supposedly helps reduce our nerves. I've also heard walnuts recommended. If you need a way to calm down right before you play, I like to imagine myself laying on a warm beach. And then I like to think about my feet sinking into the sand. And then my calves sink into the sand, then my thighs, then my pelvis and my torso, my shoulders and my arms. And finally, I just let my head sink into the warm sand. This is relaxing just even saying this for you guys. This is a great, quick, calming exercise, and it's also really helpful if you're having trouble getting to sleep. You can do it laying down or sitting up in the chair. Make sure before a big performance that you have all your music and that your horn is in working order. I never clean my horn within 2 weeks of a big performance because I like to take at least 2 weeks to microscopically tinker with my slides and the tuning to get it just the way I like it. If you have a lot of excess energy on the morning of a big performance, go for a walk or do some active exercise. You could also do yoga to try to focus that energy more. If you're committed to taking a day off before a big performance for endurance benefits, which I consistently do, but you have anxiety because you feel like you need to practice, then do mental practice. It's actually more effective anyway. Trust yourself and your preparation and practice it mentally and enjoy it. There's a popular series of books by Don Green, who was originally a sports psychiatrist for elite athletes, but in the 90s he started working with elite musicians. A couple of his best-known books are called Audition Success and Performance Success. They're kind of, part prose, part workbook format. In one of those books, he suggests you create a mental barrier, like a ring of fire around yourself before you walk out to perform. So for myself, I've kind of lived with that and developed my own idea. I like to think about a spool of gossamer golden ribbon, and in my mind, I slowly wrap it around my chair and stand until it's in the shape of this big see-through glittery golden egg. And then I imagine that a warm golden light pours into the top of the egg and pulls around my feet, then slowly fills the whole space. And I swear, as that light gets deeper and deeper within my egg, I start to feel more and more safe and relaxed. If things aren't going the way that you'd like in a performance, it's usually either air or focus. Your air might be off because of nerves, so if notes won't respond, then try for deeper breaths and actively push more air through the horn. What should you do? What should you think about during a performance? First, you should be looking at exactly the note you play while you're playing it. This will keep you focused better than anything else. My teacher Steve says that although we are taught to look ahead while we're playing, that's not always the best plan. If you're sight reading or learning the music, for the first few weeks, month, sure, you should always look ahead. But Steve says that when you're performing or preparing to perform, you already know that music. And in fact, if you look ahead, then you'll be splitting your focus between what you're looking at and what you're playing, which will be two different things. And that is a perfect recipe for a crash and burn. So in performance, look at exactly the note you're playing while you're playing it, and that will bring you into focus. I like to think about focus in terms of concentric circles. So circles within circles is what that means. One of the largest concentric circles of focus that I can imagine is the galaxy we live in, the Milky Way. That's a huge circle. If I zoom in from there, I can imagine our solar system and where the Earth fits in that solar system. Then I can bring my focus in one circle closer and think about the Earth itself. Now I'll think inward to the next concentric circle of focus where I can think about the continent that we live on and zoom in even further to the state that we live in. Then I can zoom into my city, Denver, and zoom my focus in even further to think about my house. Then let's say I bring my focus into the room that I'm sitting in. I notice the art on the walls, the books on the shelves, all the different colors. That's where our focus might be if we're distracted during performance on everything else or everyone else in the room with us. So if you notice yourself getting distracted by what's in the room, not just their presence, but your thoughts about them, try to zoom your focus into the next closest concentric circle, which is basically between you and your music stand. This is when focusing directly on each note you're playing when you're playing it will help pull your attention back to what you're doing when it's kind of gone AWOL. There's one more level concentrically of focus, and that's when you're so focused that you're basically just inside your own mind, almost like your performance is a stream of consciousness, or in other words, in the zone. There's one other thing you should think about during a performance, and sometimes this is the hardest, but it's so important, and that's enjoying yourself. There aren't many things in our lives that we prepare for 2 to 3 months to do. So when the moment comes, live it fully and with gratitude for the ability to play music, the opportunity at hand, and for the fact that other people want to hear you play music. The last thing I'll mention is a warning. Beware the allure of perfectionism. Perfectionism is often a recipe for mental and emotional unease. As you've heard me say before, none of us are perfect, so if that's your goal, then you're setting yourself up for lifelong failure. A better goal is to do your best. And the great news is that your best can always be getting better. So you've always got a new goal. My sister, who's an elementary music teacher in Texas now, was at one point a high school band director on a Navajo reservation in Arizona. We helped move her out there when I was like 10 or 11 years old, and I remember visiting a museum of Native American artifacts and learning about their rugs. Now, I don't recall if this was a Navajo tradition or if it's a tradition of the Anasazi people, who were the predecessors of the Navajo. But one of those civilizations had a tradition of weaving a mistake into each of their rugs. It was their belief that to make something perfect would be an insult to the gods, because it would seem like the humans were trying to aspire to be gods and do godly things. And I really love that thought. I mean, not the angering the gods part, but the idea that instead of building an expectation of perfection into their culture, they built in a more objective expectation, one that sees the beauty and the benefits in human imperfections. So when I make a mistake and I feel embarrassed about, I try to just make a little joke out of it to myself. Whew, thank goodness I didn't anger the gods today. Which is, number one, it kind of lightens the mood for myself, but it's really my way of thinking mistakes happen because I'm human, and that's all right. For today's attendance, we're going to do the Dr. David Burns exercise we learned earlier this year and reviewed again today. Draw 3 columns. The headers for these columns are distorted thought, label, and objective thought. In the column labeled distorted thought, you'll write the negative thought that we're trying to replace. I'm happy to suggest one for you to use. I am so bad at auditions. But if you have a negative thought about playing that you'd like to share with myself or Sean and work through instead, feel free to supply your own negative thought in the distorted thoughts column. Next, look up the uploaded document of Dr. David Burns' list of common thought distortions in our documents file. Write down the distortions that apply to your negative thought in column number 2. Remember, there will probably be more than 3 or 4 distortions in each negative thought. Then, thirdly, give some time to constructing an objective thought to replace the distorted one. It doesn't have to be a super positive, Pollyanna, I'm going to pull through kind of thought. It just needs to be more objective. It has to put the lie to the original distortion or prove it to be untrue. Write that thought in column number 3, your more true thought, and then send myself or Sean a picture of your work. See you next week for Horn Class number 12.